surrender all. Hear my simple song. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. King of heaven, come. Let your presence fall. You're saving, you are strong. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Jesus, all my heart belongs to you. Jesus, every heart belongs for you, the lover of my soul. Hold me in your arms forever. It's you and you alone, burning in my heart, the lover of my soul. You're my one true love. Every breath is yours. Hear my greatest song. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Jesus, all my heart belongs to you. Jesus, every heart belongs for you, the lover of my soul. Hold me in your arms forever. It's you and you alone, burning in my heart, the lover of my soul. Keep me in your arms forever, the lover of my soul. I am forever yours. Fall in this place. 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 The lover of my soul. Hold me in your arms forever. It's you and you alone, burning in my heart, the lover of my soul. Keep me in your arms forever, the lover of my soul. I am forever yours, the lover of my soul.
A few years ago, I went on my first trip to Nepal. In the very first morning when we were gonna trek, we just started heading up the mountain. And I'm not kidding you, I think we were on an angle like this for like 3 or 4 hours. We kept climbing this mountain. I never thought we'd reach the village that we were heading to, but finally, after a few hours, we got there. And we settled in, we were all tired, and we just had this wonderful meal with this community and had this great time of community with them. And then we heard our leader say something a few hours later. He said, "Hey, everyone, put your packs back on, get everything going, because we got a lot more trekking today." And I remember one of the teammates looked at me and he said, "Did he just say we're trekking more?" And I said, "Yes." I went out to our leader, Ramesh, and I said, "Ramesh, where are we going?" And he pointed off into the distance, and he had this tiny little blue dot across the mountain. He said, we're going to that little blue dot. That's a house. And he said, we have to come all the way around the mountain range. We have to go down into the valley, and we have to come up to make it to that house. And we have to get there before nightfall. And I thought to myself, there's no way. We're all tired. This is going to be long. We're never going to make it. But sure enough, step after step, this little team of people went around this mountain, down into the valley, and made our way up. Those last 2 hours, were excruciating, but we made it there just before nightfall and just before this horrendous rainfall. But we made it. I really think that this past year has felt like that we've had to go all the way across this mountain, down into this valley, and we're heading up. But here's the amazing thing to me. I really believe there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're starting to see it. We're even seeing how things are starting to reopen around the country and around our own city. This past week, I got to sit down with a friend of mine and actually have a meal at a restaurant. And we've been doing that regularly, and we had to stop for a while. And it was so energizing. We know that our students are going back to school little by little. So parents, you're celebrating. And by the way, great job, parents, at pivoting and changing, whether you're grandparents, whether you're foster parents, adopted parents, single parent, all of the parents out there, you just done an incredible job. And here at Kensington, our Kensington Kids program is getting back into full swing as well. And we'd love to invite you to join our team of volunteers. We know that interaction and community for our children is so critical, but we also know how important it is for young couples to have a chance to breathe and to attend a service together. If you're passionate about children and you're attending live with us at one of our campuses, consider giving just an hour of your time and heart every few weeks to jump in and to serve, because spending an hour pouring into the next generation is one of the most important things we can do. So if you'd like to help, I'd just say, please go to our app, our website, or ask anyone in the lobby at the hub what are the next steps that we can do in order to do that. So step in with us. A couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Father Ken Tanner, who's a great leader in this community, said something intriguing to me. He said that Jesus became the very thing that he loved the most. That Jesus, God, took on the form of humanity to enter into our human circumstances and be close to his creation. That's an extraordinary thought, actually. In some ways, it's probably like the ultimate episode of Undercover Boss. Okay, maybe that's stretching it just a little bit, but Jesus did walk in our humanity, and he had some of the most powerful and life-changing encounters with people. And this week, we are starting a brand new 7-week original series called Personified, where we'll be looking at some of the most intimate and intense encounters that Jesus had with people. And this will give us insight and deeper truths about God, about ourselves, and hopefully about the world around us. Our dream and hope for this series is that all of us will realize that Jesus is not detached. He's not an unapproachable king, but rather an empathetic and loving God. He desires to be part of all we are encountering in our lives, good or bad. We believe that church is much more than just 4 walls or just 1 hour per week. Church is God's people, and this past year really has shown us just that. It has forced us to think differently about what church could and potentially should be. And part of that is how our digital social spaces like our website, Instagram, Facebook, and other virtual platforms have led to greater connection and the ability to do church 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. An easy way to connect is by searching Kensington Church and join your local campus Facebook group. That's just a simple step that can keep all of us connected and knowing things about Kensington. And just so you know, behind the scenes, we are working so diligently to reimagine what Kensington will look like leading into the future, and how these incredible opportunities with our digital social spaces can help us bring the love and the hope and the peace and the presence of Jesus to more people close and far away. And I had this cool thing happen this past week, actually, that I went to my office and there was a letter that was on my desk. So I opened up the letter, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but this writing is awesome. It's a handwritten letter by a 12-year-old from Alpena named Izzy. And I'm just going to read a tiny bit of this. But it said, "Dear people of Kensington Church, my name is Izzy. I love watching Kensington Church," as they're up in Alpena. And then he says this, "The pastors and people at Kensington go out of their way to make everyone included. It is easier for us kids to understand than some churches." So I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I thought that was wonderful. And then it goes on to say, here are some of the series that I absolutely loved. And then towards the end, it said, thank you for talking about some of these issues that are happening in our culture. And at one point, they said, it has opened my eyes to injustices around me, and I'm standing up for them in my community. That's a 12-year-old. And then it ends this way. It says, me and my sisters think Jalen C. Wright, and all the others should totally try out for The Voice. So there you go. So Jalen and Aaron and Davey and everyone out there that leads our great music program, you need to try out for The Voice, according to Izzy. You know, I was so encouraged and moved by Izzy's notes. And honestly, all the stories that we're hearing during this difficult time where people are experiencing the love of Christ through our community. It is such a great honor and privilege to be on this faith journey with all of you. And know this, we are going to make it. We are close. You know, it's been a long year, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We are heading around the side of the mountain. We've been down into the valley, and we are heading up to our destination. And God is with us, and God is guiding us. I've been looking at a passage in Scripture, 1 Peter 5, and it says this, and after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace, who has called you to his eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. I'm praying that our community, collectively and individually, feels restored, confirmed, strengthened, and established by God. I'm so grateful to be on this journey together with all of you, and I pray that you have a wonderful week.
Well, good morning. Pretty pathetic. Good morning. That's better. We're so glad you've joined us today. My name is Craig Mays, and I'm the interim lead pastor at Kensington Clinton Township. And those of you that are staying out of the cold, these ones, you faced the cold weather and the cold cars as you drove over, and we're so glad you're here. But we're also glad, whether you're in Alpena, Michigan, or wherever you are, that you've joined us today. I was so encouraged to hear those hopeful words from Danny. One of my favorite prayers in the New Testament is in the book of Romans, where Paul says this. He said, may the God of hope, I love that he calls him the God of hope, may the God of hope fill you with joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you will overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. And I just sense that more hope is growing now, that we're going to come out of this winter and out of this pandemic eventually. And I heard, I met new people in the lobby today that this is their first Sunday coming back to live services, and we just know the promise that is coming. In the meanwhile, we cling to the God of hope. So, just a couple announcements this morning. We need some volunteers. Besides K-Kids, we have needs for other volunteers, and one area that we need is security. They play an important role here, even though you don't know it, because they do their job so well. But we have, for example, we have Rob over here against this wall in the shadows, and we have Chris over here, and these and others help keep this place safe. They help keep me safe. It makes me feel really important. I have guys walking behind me now with little earpieces in, and they're whispering stuff, and I'm not kidding. The first couple weeks I was here, I'm in the lobby, and this guy felt like he was stalking me, and then I realized, he's doing his job. But if you were here 2 weeks ago and you heard my story of getting mugged twice in New York City, and they got nothing, I don't need security, man. I got this covered, man. Come on, bring it on. Just kidding. So go to the hub after or go online, and there's a training that we have you go through that will equip you to help keep this a safe place when we gather together. And then the other area right now is we need more vocalists. Not like me, I can sing in the shower, that's the extent of it, but we need more for the vocal team. And so there is an audition process you go through, but you can also go give your name to someone at the hub. You can go online and you can start that process. So we'd love to have you join our team. Well, as we continue in the service, we're going to take a moment right now to receive our offering. And the way we do that these days is mostly online or through your app, or you can mail a check in. We also have some buckets in the back on your way out if you're here with us. But if this is your first time, either here or online, we really want you to be our guests. We know you're checking us out. And for those of you that have decided this is your home church, we so appreciate all the support that you give for us to do all the work that we do locally, nationally, and really around the world. So thank you, and God bless you for that. Well, as Danny said, we're starting a new series, and I have to tell you, I'm super, super excited about this series. It's called Personified, and we're going to be looking at Jesus, but really focusing on an aspect that we often overlook, which is humanity. There's this mystery. We talk about Jesus being fully God and fully man, but I think when we often look at the Gospels and the stories of Jesus, we're really thinking about him more as the Son of God. We see him healing people and calming storms, and we see the God part of it, but what about the human part of it? So we're going to take the next 7 weeks, which will take us all the way up to Good Friday and Easter, and we're going to look at the last week of Jesus as he was moving slowly toward the cross. And we're going to be zeroing in on experiences that he had, and especially focusing on his humanity. There's this verse in Luke chapter 2 that you can just kind of blow by when you read it, not think about what it's saying. But Luke wrote these words. He said, and Jesus grew. I mean, just that alone. Jesus grew. He didn't stay the same. He grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with man. Jesus grew like all human beings grew. He had to learn how to walk and talk. He had to learn how to do subtraction and multiplication. And we know that his earthly father, Joseph, was a carpenter, and we know that he was trained as a carpenter. You know, as a pastor over the years, I've been asked a lot of tough theological questions. This is one of the funniest ones. It was at a midweek service many years ago, and someone came up after and said, do you think Jesus ever made a chair where the legs were uneven? Isn't that kind of funny? And I think he thought he was going to stump me. My answer was, of course he did. Like, you know, see, that's where we don't understand or maybe fully embrace his humanity. We think that he's perfect, therefore he could not make a chair with uneven legs. But he had to learn that. So Joseph would come and say, yeah, you didn't quite get this one right. Here's what you need to do next time. So I want you to think about Jesus learning like we learned. Everything. He experienced all the emotions. He experienced joy and sorrow. He experienced disappointment and astonishment at things. He experienced the whole gamut. In fact, the writer of Hebrews put it this way. In 2 different passages, just consider these words. For this reason, he had to be made, this is Jesus, had to be made like them. It's like us. Fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and then he might make atonement for the sins of his people. And then just 2 chapters later, he says again, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. This is so important to grasp this and this aspect of his humanity, because the one we talk about every Sunday, the one we read about in the Bible, the one we worship, is one who we are told very clearly gets it. He gets your humanity. He understands what you've gone through. He's not unable to sympathize or empathize with your experience. He is able to do that because he walked in those exact steps. And so for the next 7 weeks, we're going to be walking with Jesus day by day, leading all the way up to the cross. The things that he's experienced, the emotions that he likely experienced. And our hope is that as we press into this and we embrace his humanity, we feel more of his embrace of us as human beings, his solidarity with us, his empathy, his sympathy, his provision for us, that we would be filled with the wonder of this mystery of one who is fully God and fully man.
While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her hastily. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want. But you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her."
Beauty. We long for it, measure it, worship it. It can bring us to tears, bring us to our knees, bring our wandering souls in close, or it can master us as we hunt it. desperate to be it. Push, prod, pluck, plunder our futures for that moment, gaining that thing, that someone. That level of status or fame or maybe just a frame of perfection. All perception and deception. But real beauty, unadulterated by trends, the kind that doesn't shift with winds, it is not earth-tethered, heavy-booted, practical and predictable. It's heavenly. Lifts us skyward, right into the blazing colours of the sunset, and we feel the thrill of artist near, the one whom all beauty is, found, made, sustained, bravely won. Beauty beheld is buoyant, our eyes drawn up, up, up higher than earthly spires, our souls follow, there is order, they say. But everywhere I see extravagance, magnificence, it is the whimsy of artists, the explosion of emotion, unrestrained passion for colour, texture, form all variety of, and to whom it may concern. See the rolling and frothing of rhythmic waves. See the tiny curled fingers of a just-born babe. See the vastness and mystery of endless space. Beauty is grace. He's stretched out the plans and woven threads, tight, embossed and embellished and breathed into life. It cannot be contained, explained, earned, not man-made, blind men measuring with broken scales to a perfect 10, dealing out crushed hopes and luring them back again. There is abundance here. He is abundance. In the famished lands, feast your eyes. In the grey monotony and drudgery, hear the swelling of the song, the reverberation filling thoracic cavity, sending hearts pumping, plunging back to the ethereal from the ground down, lowliness of less than, beauty, skin deep, soul deep, etched in the lines. You thought it was time. The withered hands of his servant who gave an embrace to the hungry. The limping step of his servant who gave living water to the shattered hearts. Breathtaking. All taking artistic pains in the delicate butterfly wings of stained glass panes. And in the taking and giving, he is ever given. The taker of pain, the giver of beauty.
I want you to think just for a moment about beauty. In that video, the words, the spoken word about beauty. There's beauty out there, so much beauty. But today we're going to be focusing on a different kind of beauty, the beauty that's in here. I like it, the word said skin deep, but really soul deep. In the first story that we're looking at with Jesus, we're going to look at beauty in this encounter that he has. That's a soul deep kind of beauty that Jesus experienced and that he called out when he saw it. I want to give you an assignment as we press into the story, and I'm really going to say this every week that I teach. I want to give you permission, and I want to ask you to use your imagination. Because to the best of my ability, I'm going to try to paint a word picture of this event. But I want you to try to picture it in your mind's eye. I want you to see what's actually unfolding here. I want you to see Jesus in his humanity with a group of people having a dinner together, and what's actually going on, the drama that's there, the one that's evident, but the one that's not so evident. What's happening just 7 days before he would go to the cross. To see yourself in the room, to observe what's going on, and to press into this story, and then at the end of our time together, to try to relate it back to our own stories. Like, what does this have to do with my life? What does this teach me about me? What does this teach me about me and my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus? So use your imagination as we press into this story. And then find yourself in it, to find yourself in the story. A mentor of mine told me many, many years ago that when you read the stories of the gospel, try to see where you identify in the story and make sure you don't just always pick the good guys, because there's so much richness in these stories. And we're going to look at the cast of characters that are at this dinner party with Jesus to see where we find ourselves in the story. So we begin with an experience that relates to something that happened to me just within the last 12 months. I'm going to ask you, have you ever had an experience where something happened to you that wasn't good? It was either a phone call, it was bad news, it was a conflict, maybe something bad occurred in your life. There was some heaviness in you, but you have to go hang out with people. And they don't know what happened to you. I see a few heads nodding. You've been there before. You're going to go to a party or some gathering, and you really don't want to go because this is hanging over you, but you know you have to be there and you have to kind of go along and whatever it is you're doing. It's a very uncomfortable position to be in, and this is a position I think we're going to find Jesus in to some respects. For me, last March, my wife and I had planned a trip to California to see our son. He had moved out to LA. We had not been able to make a trip out there yet. He was sharing a house with someone. He's in the film industry. He was so excited to have us come out and see where he's living. We were excited to get out to LA and get away from winter. It was in early March. So we had our plane tickets. It was all planned, and everything was planned out. Even the car, he found a cheap car that we could rent that was a convertible, because I see myself with the palm trees and the top down, and we're just like in Hollywood. We're just like, it's going to be so cool. I was so excited about it, and it was getting closer and closer. I had it circled on the calendar, and then on an early day in March, I lost my job. Came out of nowhere. When we did our series on Joseph, I told a little bit of that story, but it was an unexpected firing from my job. And at this point, I'm 64 years old. Nobody fires me. I leave a job for a different job. I never get fired. And it was shocking, and it was upsetting, and it felt wrong, and I was just beside myself, and I wasn't sleeping, and I couldn't think straight. And I got this trip coming to LA that we're not going to cancel the trip. So I chose not to call ahead and tell my son, and I really thought I would go in there and at least start off the trip, just be myself and have fun, because I knew how excited he was for us to come out and visit, and I didn't want to dampen it. So we flew there, we got off the plane, we met him in the terminal, we went out and got our car, we put the top down. It was just like an amazing experience, except for me it wasn't, because all my thoughts were about my future, what had happened, the insecurity of it. The pandemic was starting to build. I got to try to find a job during a pandemic. It was just all this negativity. And he had this favorite restaurant on Venice Beach, sit outside, have these tacos and whatever. He couldn't wait to bring us to this restaurant. And we're riding in the car, and I'm being pretty quiet. And we sit down, and we order our food, and my wife and I and Josh are just sitting there. And I'm trying to engage, and you know what? I just couldn't do it. Chatter about catching up, talk about the weather, talk about sports, talk about stuff of life. I just wasn't in it. I just couldn't engage in that, because I knew something that he didn't know, and it colored everything for me. And so I just got choked up, and I said, "I'm sorry, Josh. I don't want to ruin the week. I know how much you've been looking forward to this. We have too, but I had something bad happen a week ago. I lost my job, and then of course we came around and we hugged and we cried together, and then we had a great week together. But it was just this awkward situation of being with a group of people, and of course my wife knew, but I knew something he didn't know, and the connection was so hard to make that connection until it came out. Well, in some respects, this is where we find Jesus in our first story this week. We're calling it Alabaster. You heard the reading from the scripture. You heard the song. It's a story about Jesus being anointed with this expensive perfume when he's at a dinner party. And so let's jump into the story now. Both Mark and John, two Gospels, record this story, but they each add different elements. So I've combined the two together. So we're going to jump back and forth a little bit so we get the whole picture. All right, so you got your imagination ready? I'm going to try to paint a picture. I want you to peek in the window and see what's going on and see who's actually there. So here's where we begin. From John 12. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. And then Mary, and I'm going to stop there, because we've introduced some characters here. Now, Mark, that's John's account. Mark tells us the name of the owner of the house. His name was Simon the leper. So you got Mary and Martha and Lazarus and Simon the leper, and then as we'll find out, the disciples were there as well, and probably some others. So this is a dinner party, and it was given in Jesus' honor. Now, again, let's think about the humanity of Jesus. In the human form, in his human mind and consciousness and heart, he knew in 7 days he was not going to be at a dinner party. He was going to be on a cross. And everybody will have abandoned him, and he will have been betrayed by one of his closest friends. He knew all that. He's at a dinner party in his honor. So what's going on in this room? Can you picture it? What he might be feeling and what nobody else seemed to know was going on, right? So Mary and Martha, let's talk about them first. If you know the Bible a little bit, you might know the story of these two sisters who also had a dinner or lunch party for him. And he was teaching in the home, and Mary, the same Mary now in this story, was sitting at his feet, listening, and I think learning because of what happens in this story. She was really paying attention. Her sister Martha was off in the kitchen getting all the food ready and getting more and more irritated that she was doing all the work, and her dumb sister, it doesn't actually say dumb in the Bible, but that's what she was thinking. Her dumb sister was sitting there and not helping out. And so at one point, she actually comes out and interrupts Jesus' teaching. Can you imagine that? And she said, she gives Jesus a command. Tell my sister to come and help me. Right? So Jesus, I think with lots of compassion, empathy, says to her, because he says her name twice. He says, Martha, Martha, you are busy and bothered by so many things. And by the way, I'm a Martha, so identifying with the story, that's me. Believe it or not, that's me. I'm active. I don't want to sit, ever. So he says, Mary has made the better choice. So hold on to that thought. Two sisters, they're both at the party we're looking at today, but in the past, they were at a similar gathering, and one was serving and pretty ticked off, and one was sitting there at the feet of Jesus listening and learning. So those are the two sisters that are there. The next character, if we're peeking in the window, is Lazarus. How would you like to have at a dinner party someone who was raised from the dead? You think you might be talking about that a little bit? And this is what actually happened. Mary and Martha, one time when Lazarus got sick, in Bethany is only about 3 kilometers, I think, from Jerusalem, or maybe 3 miles. They sent word to Jesus that their brother was dying, and please come and help. And so Jesus got there, but when he got there, he had died, and he had already been put in the tomb. And the sisters are upset, and they're weeping, and Jesus takes them in front of the tomb. And John records these words of Jesus from John 11. Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face, kind of looking like a mummy. I mean, can you picture it? What was that like? To stand in the tomb and all of a sudden he comes out. I mean, I think I'd turn and run the other way. It's going to be kind of scary. But this is what Lazarus had experienced, and the two sisters who are now at this dinner party given in Jesus' honor, they're there together. And I would imagine that there wasn't a lot of small talk around the table. If it was me, I would say, hey, Lazarus, I know you've said it before, but what was it like to get up off that, where you were laying in the tomb and come out with that cloth around your face? And then Mary and Martha, tell us what it was like to stand there and actually see your brother coming out. I mean, I think this is what they want to talk about. This is what's in their mind. Probably not a lot of time for idle chatter. And then the other character is Simon the Pharisee, Simon the leper. Wouldn't you hate to have that name? Who are you inviting over? Simon the leper. Oh, is he okay? Yeah, Jesus healed him, because I'm assuming that Jesus healed him, right? And that's why he's there in his house, and that's why the dinner is being given in his honor. There's at least 3 people who have benefited greatly from Jesus' ministry. In fact, there's at least 11 people we know of that were healed of leprosy, but I think hundreds more. But there was one time when 10 lepers came, and at one time they were healed, and they all went away, and then we're told that one turned and came back. So I'm just going to guess maybe it was Simon, because when he came back and thanked Jesus for what he had done, I think he may have wanted to hang out with Jesus and follow him. And so, peeking in the window now at this dinner party, to make sure you're in your imagination, you're seeing this, you have Jesus who knows what's coming, but he says yes to a party in his honor. He knows they don't know. These are his closest friends, the family, the 2 sisters and their brother. His disciples are there. Simon, who he healed from leprosy, they're there. It's an amazing dinner party, but Jesus knows something that they don't know. And I think if we can understand and embrace that he was a human being as well, there had to be a heaviness of his heart. There had to be some form of angst over what he was going to be facing, not just the physical rejection and the spitting in his face and the name calling and crucify him and the death, but just also he was going to bear the weight of the sins of the world. This was all before him, before we're here next Sunday, and that much time, that's what Jesus was going to face, and he knew that. So they've assembled in his honor. Now let's go back to the story. John 12:3. Mary then took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. So this was a pretty powerful perfume. You know how we light candles today and it fills the whole house, beautiful fragrance? That's what it was like. She took an alabaster jar, which she had to break it open, and she poured it out on Jesus, anointing him. Now, how did the room react? Picture them around the table. How did they react? I think there was probably a moment of stunned silence. And then one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who is the bad guy before he's the really bad guy, says this. He was later to betray him. He objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. So think about what you make in a year and buying a bottle of perfume. It costs that much. And then, it's something you would spread over time, like maybe about 1,000 years, It's a family heirloom you pass down. You're not going to spend a year's wages on perfume. In this one act, Mary breaks it and anoints Jesus with it. And so Judas said it was wasteful, and Mark tells us in his account that they all agreed. Everybody's getting on Mary now. They scolded her, we're told. They scorned her for doing this. So this would have been a tough spot for Mary, don't you think? I think there would have been, again, like once they talked, there is silence now. All eyes are on Mary because she's just been scolded in front of everybody. And by the way, women were not generally reclining at the table with men during this day. She wouldn't normally have even been in the room. Martha was getting the food ready and serving, but Mary was there, which tells you a lot about Jesus, by the way. It's something that we just take for granted, I think, but when you read the Gospels, women did not have a role in anything during that day, and Jesus had women around him all the time. So she was scolded. Think about Mary coming prepared to do this. She brought it with her to a dinner party. She carried it very carefully, I think, because if you drop that on the journey and it breaks, a year's wages. So before we get the answer to the story, I want you to think, why would Mary bring that to a dinner party? What was going on with her? And then without any announcement or fanfare, she just gets up on her own, and people are probably talking, all of a sudden they hear the noise of the crack, and then they smell the perfume, and then they look at her, and she anoints Jesus with it, and then with her own hair, she wipes his feet. Had to be stunned silence at this. Awkward moment. But then Jesus speaks. And now we're going to switch to Mark, his account. He says, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful, beautiful thing for me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want, but you will not always have me. And then he said something which is definitely, if you want to ruin a dinner party, say something like this. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. I mean, that would be like a bomb dropping in. What are you talking about? And then he ends by saying, truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. And as I read those words right now, you know what I'm mindful of? That this is February 14th, Happy Valentine's Day, 2021, Clinton Township, Michigan, and we're doing what Jesus said. We're telling her story. We're remembering her sacrifice. We're remembering what she did. And most importantly, we're remembering that Jesus called what she did beautiful. He saw the beauty in what she did. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But in his response, I believe he silenced the critics. And I think the rest of them by now were now scratching their heads, though, because they're saying, did he just say burial? Did he really say burial? What is he talking about? Because they should have known, but they didn't know. The truth is, Jesus had been telling his disciples and others for some time now, as he was getting closer and closer to his crucifixion, he began to tell his disciples what was going to come. It's recorded many times in the gospel. I'm going to share just one with you from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Jesus was teaching his disciples, and this is what he was saying to them. The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And after 3 days, he will rise. But, we're told, they did not understand what he meant. And then I love this, although I don't fully understand it, and they were afraid to ask him. So try to picture now the 12, especially, traveling with Jesus for 3 years, and now in the last year, he starts saying this to them. It's more than once. He's saying, listen, guys, you need to know how this is going to go down. The day is going to come when they're going to arrest me, and I'm going to be killed, but I'm going to rise again in 3 days. But they didn't understand it. They didn't comprehend it, and they were afraid to ask him. And I don't really pretend to know exactly why they were afraid. Maybe it's because they didn't want to know. Maybe that was so shocking because they're thinking, wait, you raised Lazarus from the dead, and you're gonna be killed yourself. Like, can't you just kind of take care of that on your own? Prevent it, right? Or we've seen you heal people. We've seen you calm storms. Like, really? Somehow in their mind, they just could not get to the point where they could understand what this meant. So they chose to ignore it. So now they're at a dinner party 6-7 days away from this event happening, and they're not aware of it, and they're not thinking about it. But now here's Mary. And I'm taking a little bit of liberty with this, but here's Mary who sat at his feet, listening, learning, paying attention. And somehow she knew. When they didn't want to know and understand, she must have known because she came prepared. Here she is, without a word, getting up and anointing him with his expensive perfume for his burial. I think she was with him in love and human connection and empathy. And again, thinking of Jesus' humanity, he needed this. In this moment, in the weight of what was coming, the world was going to be turned upside down. To know that in this room there was someone who got it. Have you ever had that experience where no one gets it and then finally someone gets it? And usually when that's happening, there's been 100 people that have said, oh, I understand what you're going through. And you're thinking, no, you don't. But then there's that human connection. Someone, for some reason, you sense it. You see it in their eyes. You just sense it. And you hear it in the words they're speaking and the way they are just with you. And they get it. And it helps carry the burden of that moment. I think for Jesus, this is one such moment. In his humanity, he always had the Father with him, but he was living among human beings as a human being. And his disciples were clueless of what was going on, really, in the end. And they would all betray him or leave him or flee from him and leave him alone. But now, here in this moment, in this important moment, here's Mary. Can you picture it? As he's reclining at the table and she gets up in front of everyone, she does this amazing act of generosity and compassion for him. And he calls it beautiful. She has done a beautiful thing for me. What was the beauty? And it was in the words of one of the songs we heard just a little bit ago. The beauty was in that surrender to him. She held nothing back. I mean, Judas was right. Everybody in the room was thinking the same thing. If I was in the room, I was thinking something like that. I'm telling you, I know myself. That much money, wait, we could get a plan. We could do a lot of good with that. What a waste. But Mary knew this one who was God incarnate was going to go to the grave. And because she was paying attention, she knew that wasn't the end of the story. There was nothing wasteful in this. In this moment, the Son of God incarnate was going to give up his life. And so she's preparing him, which is what they would do for burials. That was how they took care of bodies when someone died. They would anoint them with some kind of oil. But she picked the most expensive one and did it. And Jesus said that was beautiful. So let's think about our story now in light of this story. If you were in the room at the table, reclining there, where would you be in that story? And the thing, as I reflected on that this week, one of the things that really struck me was that, and this may sound like so simple and obvious to you, but what Mary did had an impact on Jesus, a positive impact. I grew up thinking that I had an impact on God, but it was always negative. He was mad at me all the time. So I knew I could act a certain way and it would influence God to be angry. I don't think I thought very much, if at all, that how I behave can bring beauty and even pleasure to God. That we can bring pleasure to God, that Jesus was impacted and influenced by the choices that she made. And I've been thinking since I've been getting ready for this message about getting up every day and saying, all right, can I be Mary today where God will at one point go like, wow, that was beautiful, Craig. I see the beauty. I see the inner beauty. In fact, there's a verse in Peter that talks about this inner beauty. Peter's writing about how we would fix ourselves up, adorn ourselves and dress ourselves up to look good. That's fine. But he says, let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. I'm just moved right now by the thought that I can act, I can live, I can move and breathe and do things this week where God would say, oh, that is so precious. And to know that God longs for that. I know sometimes it's hard to think about God longing for something, but that's what he longs for. He longs for our surrender. He longs for our devotion. And we mess up all the time. And that's why we have a faithful high priest who is able to sympathize with our weakness. He's been tempted in all ways like us, yet without sin. By the way, you know what my Cliff Notes version of that is? You know how we say, been there, done that? Right? Been there, done that? Well, Hebrews tells us about Jesus, been there, didn't do that. But I can help you not do that. That's the whole point. So, every day there's many things I do that's not precious. And Jesus would never say, oh, Craig's just done a beautiful thing when he cut off that driver or honked his horn or cut in front, or whatever I do. But to know that we have the capacity, think about this. You have capacity to move the heart of Jesus when he sees beauty. When he looks at the internal, the soul, the spirit, the inner person, and sees something in there that's beautiful, and he says, that is precious. I don't know, that just motivates me this week, and it has this last week at a new level, to look for those moments of beauty, and that Jesus might actually be saying those words, oh, that's amazing, that's beautiful, Craig. That is so precious to me. To know that he's moved by how we behave. And one of the ways that the New Testament describes this, in very simple words, it says that we should please God. You know what please God means? It means you bring pleasure to God. If I do something to please my wife, Chris, then she's experiencing pleasure. Like it's Valentine's Day and I'm not with her. We're 650 miles apart. But I left a little Valentine's card for there, and inside I put a gift certificate for a pedicure and manicure. And I'm hoping, someone said, but, and she might actually be live streaming right now, and I hope you probably didn't open it yet, darn. She's been watching, I think, some of those 11 o'clock services, so anyhow, I hope I didn't spoil the surprise. But, the thing, when she experiences that, she experiences pleasure, right? God experiences that from us. Isn't that extraordinary to think about that? And Jesus, here in this moment, experienced that when Mary made that sacrifice. So that's the first thing. The second thing, when I think of application of this story, is this. It just affirms that Jesus has been there. He understands. I didn't think of it when I was sitting at Venice Beach at this restaurant with this dark story that I didn't want to make known, and I was trying to engage with my son. But reading the story this week, it's why I came up with this illustration. Now I said, oh, you get that. You were, and it was way worse, I mean, not even comparable, right? But you had the weight of the world on your shoulders and in your heart and in your mind 6 days before your arrest, before you were going to be crucified. And here was one who came in and served you. Now, as I go through life with all the heaviness and burdens and difficulties and sufferings that we all have to encounter, can we really believe, do we dare to believe that when we reach out to Jesus, if we can reach out to him, he does say, I get it, I understand. You know, from all the physical things we experience with hunger and thirst and cold and heat, too much heat and everything, he experienced all of that. With all the emotional challenges of life, the difficult relationships, the conflicts, all of that, people that turned his back, he was falsely accused of something. He was actually put to death for something he didn't do. He went through the worst kinds of things as a human being. Yes, he was God, but he was a human being. And so this story reminds us that we do have one. The God we talk about here every Sunday, the God we worship every Sunday, is not one who's far off, somewhere remote out in the universe, kind of peeking in on what we're doing. As Danny said in the video, he became who he loved, a human being. And so we have a God who's not far off. He's near. He's here. He's with us. And he is on the journey. When we're walking down whatever path, I'm looking at many faces today, and I don't know what path you're walking down this week. Hopefully a lot of good paths. Hopefully it's at least a mixture, but some of you are on a hard path right now. Whether it's about health or it's about finance or it's about any of the challenges of life, you are not walking alone. And when you pray and you talk to God and you try to draw strength from him, you are not walking alone. You're not walking with a God who tries to understand from afar. You are walking with a God who says, I've been there. I understand. And he's able, because of that, to bring comfort, to bring strength, to bring endurance, whatever it is that we need. You know, we need it from each other as well. We are to walk this together, but the God who is behind and in all of this is one who is able to empathize, is able to understand. I want to close with an old hymn. I'm not going to sing it, in case you're worried. And, you know, there's so much richness in some of the old hymns. And I love the music that we have today. Every generation needs its music and to create. And this church does such a great job of that, the beauty of what we do every week. But this is a very old hymn. It might be so old that nobody here has heard these words before, but I found them this week, and I just wanted to share them with you. It says, no one understands like Jesus. He's a friend beyond compare. Meet him at the throne of mercy. He is waiting for you there. No one understands like Jesus. Every woe he sees and feels. Tenderly he whispers comfort. In the broken heart he heals. No one understands like Jesus when the foes of life assail. You should never be discouraged. Jesus cares and will not fail. Jesus, we embrace that truth in these moments. Thank you that you walk the next 6 days to the place that ultimately revealed the extent of your love for us. Thank you that you understand. Thank you that you walk the dusty roads of this earth, that you experience all that we experience. And thank you that we can come to you with all of that and know that we have a friend who understands and cares. And I ask, even in this closing song, in our closing moments together, that we will sense how much you are with us and are for us. That even now we would experience your presence and your love. I pray this in your name. Amen.
You go before, I know that you've even gone to win my war. You come back with the head of my enemy. You come back and you call been gone to win my war. Your love becomes my greatest defense. It leads me from the dry wilderness, and all I did was praise. All I did was worship. All I did was bow down. All I did was stay still. Hallelujah, you have saved me. So much better your way. Hallelujah, great defender. So much better your way. You know before I do, when my heart can seek to find your truth. Your mercy is the shade I'm living in, and you restore my faith and hope again. And all I did was praise. All I did was worship. All I did was bow down. All I did was stay still. Hallelujah, you have saved me. So much better your way. Hallelujah, great defender. So much better your way. Hallelujah, hallelujah, you have saved me. So much better your way. Hallelujah, great defender. So much better your way. And when I thought I lost me, you knew where I left me. You reintroduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces, put me back together. You were the defender of my heart. And when I thought I lost me, you knew where I left me. You reintroduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces, put me back together. You are the defender of my heart. And when I thought I lost me, you knew So much better your way. So much better your way. And all we did was praise. All we have to do is worship. Lord, we'll just bow down. Oh, we'll just stay still.
So I hope we can leave today feeling loved by God. We have to live loved, because if we live loved, then we respond to that love. None of this is about human effort. You don't please God so that he will love you. When you love him, you live in a way that you bring pleasure to him. It's important to not get that the other way around. We're not earning anything, but because of his love, as we respond to his love, he brings pleasure. And I have a new way of saying it now, because sure enough, I got this text from my wife, and it's a wow with about 8 O's in it. So I guess it would be wow. Thanks for the pedicure. So what I'm going to say now is that let's go out and have God this week say, wow, amazing. We do it with him in his strength, not on our own, okay? One announcement before you go. So I flew in Friday from New York and flew over Lake St. Clair, and there's all ice, no water. But it's not going to stay that way forever. The water's going to come back. The ice is going to melt. And I absolutely love water, and I spent decades sailing on Lake St. Clair. I know every part of that lake. I love it. And I'm planning on sailing this summer sometime when it melts. But we're going to do a series starting this Wednesday for midweek. We do one a month. It's called Lessons on the Lake. I thought since we're close to Lake St. Clair, we're going to pretend that's the Sea of Galilee. And we're going to look at 4 different things that happened either in the middle of a lake with Jesus and his disciples or on the shore that are just extraordinary things that we can learn from. So we're calling it Lessons on the Lake. And the first one is this Wednesday. It's going to snow tomorrow and Tuesday and Thursday, according to the weather forecast. So you have no excuse. Or you can join us online. We will be live streaming at 7 o'clock. And it's also a time that we can sit in more worship. I mean, more of this. You guys, thank you so much. It was so beautiful today. So it's a time to just shout out everything out, to learn from Jesus together, to worship him. It'll be a great time. So if you're able to, we would love to see you back here on Wednesday. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next Sunday. God bless.